Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Part of developing this skill of anchoring ourselves and grounding ourselves in the Qur'an is being familiar with the themes, concepts, and stories presented therein. The Qur'an is full of stories because throughout human history, stories have always been how human beings best learn some of the most important lessons that life has to offer. As Allah tells us in Surah Yusuf, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Surely in their stories, the stories of the prophets and the people of the past is a lesson for those who have intellect. Because those who have intellect are able to look at someone else's story, cut away the details, and identify the core principle, and then apply that story into their own life. Because core principles will always be relevant, regardless of time and place. One of those stories that is discussed repeatedly in the Qur'an, which there are many lessons to be learned from, is that of Nuh, عليه السلام, one of the earliest prophets and the very first messenger that was ever sent to humanity. His story is recounted a number of times in the Qur'an with quite a bit of detail. He is one of the few prophets and messengers about whom we know quite a bit compared to others, and appropriately so. After all, he is among ulul azmi min ar-rusul, those with the strongest of determination from the messengers. This is a special category of an already very special group of people that Allah tells us about in the Qur'an. The prophets and messengers are already the best of humanity, but the best among them are Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad alayhimus salatu wassalam. This category of messengers includes those who encountered particularly extraordinary difficulties and challenges in their messengership and preaching to their respective communities. And we will see in a few moments how Nuh alayhi salam fits squarely into that category. The story of Nuh alayhi salam is recounted in detail in his namesake surah, Surah Nuh, as well as in Surah Hud, where there's also quite substantial detail. His story is mentioned briefly alongside other prophets in similar struggles in Suratul A'raf, Mu'minun, Ankabut, and his name is briefly mentioned in Suratul Anbiya and Furqan. Transporting ourselves way back to the very beginnings of human history after Adam alayhi salam passed away, his children and progeny multiplied manifold and grew into various towns, villages, and communities. And at this point in time, all of humanity was upon the religion of their father, Adam alayhi salam, worshiping Allah alone without any partners, not associating Allah with anything or anything with him. Although the children of Adam alayhi salam diversified and grew into their own pockets of society, they were still one united ummah under Islam. All the while, Shaitan is trying his best to come up with a plan to divert the community from Tawheed, the worship of Allah alone. He is planning and plotting and thinking how he can fulfill his promise to Allah, the promise that he made when Adam was first created. Shaitan promised Allah, as is narrated for us in the Qur'an, لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I will cause all of humanity to deviate. I will lead all of them astray. إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ, except those servants of yours who are chosen and saved. So he's thinking and planning how to fulfill his primary objective in life. He wants people to worship other than Allah alone, but he knows he cannot just jump into that all of a sudden. Remember, at this point in human history, the only way of life that exists is Islam. There are no other options yet. There are no other influences or varying belief systems. And Shaitan, despite at this point in time having relatively little experience with how human beings work, he knows he cannot just jump into whispering to a devout community, "Hey, worship idols." Because worshiping idols out of the blue would be so outlandish and wrong to them. They have no exposure to this at all. Remember, humanity at this point has no familiarity with anything other than Islam. So Shaitan knew that he would have to reel them in step by step, draw the people in slowly but methodically. He knows he will not get all the people to worship idols in one stage. So he has to put multiple precursors in play to make the idea more and more palatable to them. Shaitan recognized that there was a demographic from among the people that was especially dedicated and devoted to Allah. The cream of the crop, righteous and pious individuals, fearing Allah, worshiping Allah all day and night. And the rest of society loved and admired this pocket of individuals who had an especially close connection with Allah. Eventually, these pious individuals who were respected and admired by the rest of humanity would, one by one, pass away. And so Shaitan utilized this opportunity of emotional vulnerability to lure the people in to the earliest stages of worshiping other than Allah. He would remind them of how sad they are, remind them about how much they miss these pious individuals, remind them how much they could wish to just see them one more time. And eventually, Shaitan encouraged the people to make drawings and sculptures of these individuals, placing them in their homes and places of worship. And at this stage, people are not worshiping those images. Remember, with Shaitan, one of his most successful ways of diverting people from Allah is with a slow and steady burn. The people still worship Allah alone and recognize that these drawings and statues cannot do anything. It's just to remind them. It's just nice. It's a pleasant thing to look at to remind them of the people from the past. They would respect and honor these images, and whenever a pious individual would pass away, they would create a statue or an image of that person. Generations passed, and one thing turned into another. The children would see their parents honoring these images, even kissing these images and touching these images, lowering their heads out of respect, bowing out of respect. And one thing turned into the next, and later generations actually began prostrating to these images, supplicating to these statues, and making sacrifices for them. The children of each generation would see their parents doing something even more exaggerated than what their parents used to do. And eventually, these images and statues became idols. Deities that people worshipped just as their forefathers would worship Allah. Idol worship began becoming widespread. Polytheism was everywhere. And this calamity needed someone, a fellow relatable human being, to speak directly to the people and bring them back to the true message of Allah and Islam, to advise them about their wrongdoing and remind them about their true purpose in life. Nuh alayhi salam was that human being. He was not an angel. Rather, he was someone who the people could look to as a practical example on how to worship Allah and live life. He was kind, honest, pious, and Allah chose Nuh alayhi salam to be his messenger by telling him, أَنذِرْ قَوْمَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Warn your people before a painful punishment comes to them. Nuh alayhi salam introduced his message and his role by telling everyone, "Inni lakum rasulun ameen." I am a trustworthy messenger for all of you. His message was incredibly simple. Ya qawm, u'budullah, ma lakum min ilahin ghayru, inni akhafu alaykum adhaba yawmin azim. My people, worship Allah. You have no other deity and nothing worthy of worship other than Him. I fear the punishment of a tremendous day for all of you. But the people did not understand how refusing to worship idols was something praiseworthy. From all they could remember, their forefathers worshipped idols. The generation of Adam alayhi salam was completely forgotten. So the people responded to Nuh by saying, "Inna lanaraka fi dalalin mubin." We believe you to be in clear misguidance. For them, it was blasphemous to not worship idols. But Nuh persisted in telling them, Ya qawm, laysa bi dalala, walakinni rasulun min rabbil alameen, uballighukum risalati rabbi, wa ansahu lakum, wa a'lamu min Allahi ma la ta'lamun. My people, I am not afflicted with misguidance. Rather, I am a messenger from the Lord of everything, conveying to you the messages of my Lord, and giving you sincere and genuine advice. I know from Allah that which you do not know. Nuh alayhi salam strived his hardest to make them believe, worship Allah alone, and abandon idols. But only a relatively few number of people followed him, and furthermore, the ones who did were not among the leaders, the wealthy, the influential people of society. Rather, they were from the poor and the lower class. So when the wealthy folks saw that the only people who follow Nuh are the poor and destitute, instead of seeing Nuh's followers as a sign that they should worship too, the hotshots of society viewed it as something to drive them even further away. They would say things like, "Anu'minu laka wattaba'aka al-ardhalun?" Are we really going to believe you when the only people who follow you are the lowest class of people? But Nuh alayhi salam was firm in his conviction that class and social status do not matter. Rather, it is a person's heart that matters. So he replied, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. I am not one to cast away the believers. Low social class or not, I will never abandon them. So Nuh alayhi salam continued calling the people to Allah, and the people continued coming up with their own baseless arguments about why they shouldn't. One of the methods Nuh alayhi salam used to call them to Allah was to encourage them to observe the world around them and ponder over creation, pushing them to reflect on how their idols can't do anything, let alone create anything. Rather, the one who created the grandeur of everything we see around us is the only being deserving of worship. So Nuh alayhi salam tells them, أَلَمْ تَرَوْا كَيْفَ خَلَقَ اللَّهُ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا وَجَعَلَ الْقَمَرَ فِيهِنَّ نُورًا وَجَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ سِرَاجًا. And he continues telling them, وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ بِسَاطًا لِتَسْلُكُوا مِنْهَا سُبُلًا فِجَاجًا. Don't you see how Allah has created 7 skies above you arranged in layers? And He placed the moon among those layers as a source of light. And He placed the sun as a lamp. And He made the earth spread out wide for you so that you can walk through its pathways. But Nuh alayhi salam did not limit himself to only one approach. Nuh alayhi salam also used encouragement and promises of the hereafter to invite people to Allah. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. Seek forgiveness from your Lord. He is the most forgiving. He will send abundant rain upon you from the skies, and He will provide for you abundantly with wealth and children. He will give you gardens and rivers. And not only was Nuh alayhi salam diversifying the subject matter he talked about, but he also diversified the means of delivering that invitation to Allah. ثم إني دعوتهم جهارا ثم إني أعلنت لهم وأسررت لهم إسرارا. I invited them openly, I invited them in public, I invited them in private. But for the vast majority of people, zilch. It did nothing for them. Not only did they reject his message, but after a while, they just stopped trying to come up with any sort of argument to push back. They previously tried to make arguments such as, he's only doing this for wealth and power, he's just trying to become famous, he's misguided, he's foolish. But it eventually got to a point where the people just stopped trying. وإني كلما دعوتهم لتغفر لهم جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا. Every time I invite them to your forgiveness, O Allah, they put their fingers in their ears and they put their clothes over their heads, and they do this persistently and arrogantly. The people are just so done. They aren't even giving Nuh the time of day anymore, let alone seriously considering what he has to say. And this state of affairs continued for an unimaginably long period of time. فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا خَمْسِينَ عَامًا. He remained as a messenger among his people for 950 years. For 950 years, he was patiently, gently, and kindly calling the people to Allah. Clearly, we can see why Nuh alayhi salam is included in ulil azmi min ar-rusul, the messengers with the strongest determination. The level and amount he had to deal with, all with patience and sincerity and kindness, is truly remarkable. The people of Nuh became so frustrated at one point, they just eventually told him, Ya Nuh, قد جادلتنا فأكثرت جدالنا فأتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين. Nuh, you have debated with us and you have argued with us and you have done so excessively. So why don't you just go ahead and bring us what you have promised if you're really being truthful? They were in a mocking tone, literally asking for the punishment of Allah to come down upon them. So Allah revealed to Nuh, إِنَّهُ لَن يُؤْمِنَ مِنْ قَوْمِكَ إِلَّا مَنْ قَدْ آمَنَ فَلَا تَبْتَئِسْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. No one else from among your people is going to believe, except for those who have already done so. So do not despair, do not be distressed by what the people do. Nuh then makes dua to Allah to completely obliterate the disbelievers from the face of the earth. وَقَالَ نُوحُ الرَّبِّ لَا تَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَّارًا إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ يُضِلُّ عِبَادَكَ وَلَا يَلِدُوا إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَّارًا. My Lord, do not leave anyone from the disbelievers as an inhabitant upon the earth. If you spare them, they will misguide your servants and will only give birth to more disbelievers. And this is an aspect of Nuh alayhi salam's story that is commonly misunderstood. People may personify Nuh alayhi salam as someone aggressive, angry, someone who had the audacity to make dua against his own community to be completely wiped off the face of the earth. When people think of Nuh, they may not think of someone who is gentle and has a really soft and tender heart. But this is a terrible misunderstanding. For 950 years, Nuh alayhi salam was the pinnacle and epitome of gentleness and softness, patiently calling the people to Allah and doing so in a variety of different ways to see what works for different groups. Having genuine love and genuine concern for those who would not even give him the time of day. It was only after Allah revealed to him that no one else is going to believe that he made this dua. And furthermore, his dua was not out of anger or frustration. His dua was not to spite his people and get revenge for all of the wrong that they used to do to him. Hashahu, it wasn't because of that. Rather, it was out of genuine concern for the future generations of humanity. He did not want future generations to be plagued by idol worship. He did not want the future generations to be tested with this profound test. Why sacrifice the afterlife of so many just to save a small few group of arrogant disbelievers? Nuh alayhi salam's dua was actually a manifestation of mercy in and of itself, because he cared so much about the future generations, their success in the hereafter, that he made this dua. And so Allah answered Nuh's dua and instructed him to build a ship, because Allah was going to drown and flood the earth. اصنع الفلك بأعيننا ووحينا. Build the ship, the ark, under our watch and at our direction. So Nuh alayhi salam began building this large, massive ship, and the disbelievers noticed, Nuh, building a massive ship when there is no body of water in sight? Why is he doing this? What is this for? So they mocked him and made fun of him. But Nuh alayhi salam responded by telling them, إن تسخروا منا فإنا نسخر منكم كما تسخرون. If you are mocking us, then we will soon laugh at you the way you are laughing at us. Once the ark was complete, the storm started brewing and the signs of a flood became apparent. So Allah commanded Nuh, احمل فيها من كل زوجين اثنين وأهلك إلا من سبق عليه القول ومن آمن. Carry onto the ship a pair of every single creature, those who believe, and your family, except for those who have a separate decree designated for them. The flood grew in intensity and began flowing throughout the earth with waves the size of mountains. وَهِيَ تَجْرِي بِهِمْ فِي مَوْجٍ كَالْجِبَالِ. The people that were disbelievers were trying to run away and flee and climb onto high elevated places to run away from the punishment of Allah. But there can be no true protector other than Him. Nuh alayhi salam then in the distance spots his own son in one of those high elevation areas trying to seek shelter from the storm. Nuh alayhi salam calls out to his son and tells him to join alongside the believers on the ship. Ya bunay, irkam ma'ana wa la takum ma'al kafirin. My son, board and ride with us and do not be from among the disbelievers. The son, however, out of ignorance or arrogance, deemed that his spot in the mountain would be sufficient. Sa'awi ila jabali ya'simuni min al-ma'. I will take shelter in a mountain that will protect me from the water. Nuh alayhi salam, now flustered and exasperated, replies, La 'asima al-yawma min amri Allahi illa man rahim. There is no protection and no protector on this day from the command of Allah except for those whom He has shown mercy. And while they are in the middle of this back and forth conversation, in the middle of their dialogue, وَحَالَ بَيْنَهُمَا الْمَوْجُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْمُغْرَقِينَ. One of the most powerful and truly heartbreaking uses of imagery in the Qur'an, really transporting us from our seats and placing us right at the scene of this tragic event. A giant wave separates them mid-conversation, and the son ends up being from among those who drowned. The storm is eventually commanded to end, the flood discontinues, the water recedes, and the matter has been carried through. وَقِيلَ يَا أَرْضُ ابْلَعِي مَاءَكِ وَيَا سَمَاءُ أَقْلِعِي وَغِيضَ الْمَاءُ وَقُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ. Meanwhile, Nuh alayhi salam, understandably saddened by what took place between him and his son, he says, رَبِّ إِنَّ بِنِي مِنْ أَهْلِي وَإِنَّ وَعْدَكَ الْحَقُّ وَأَنْتَ أَحْكَمُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. My Lord, surely my son is from my family, and surely your promise is true, and you are the best of judges. Nuh alayhi salam, his sadness is valid. This was his son, his flesh and blood. He was not able to save his son from the water in this life, but it would make sense that he still wants to save his son from the fire in the hereafter. But Allah corrects this understanding of what true family really means. قال يا نوح إنه ليس من أهلك إنه عمل غير صالح. Nuh, he was not from your family. He was one of unrighteous behavior. Allah does not look at family relations and bloodlines. It doesn't matter who you are related to or what connections you have. Allah looks at a person's heart and their actions. A disbeliever is not the true ahl, the true family of a prophet, even if that disbeliever is a prophet's own biological son. Nuh alayhi salam realizes and understands this concept and says, قال ربي إني أعوذ بك أن أسألك ما ليس لي به علم وإلا تغفر لي وترحمني أكن من الخاسرين. My Lord, I seek refuge in you from asking you about that which I have no knowledge. If you don't forgive me and have mercy upon me, I will be from among the losers. The ark settles upon a mountain called Judi, and Allah commands Nuh and the inhabitants of the ark, اهبط بسلام منا وبركات عليك وعلى ممن معك. Descend with safety, come down with safety and blessings upon you and upon some of the future generations among you. So Nuh alayhi salam disembarks the ship along with all that was on it onto dry land safely. The disbelievers are no more, and everyone that is left is upon the message of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then caused this generation of people to flourish, filling the earth back up with a wide variety of human beings, spreading throughout the land and living the test that is life. And so we conclude the story of Nuh alayhi salam as Allah Himself does so in the Qur'an, Salamun ala Nuhin fil alamin. Safety and protection is upon Nuh, always and forever, among the rest of creation. وصل اللهم على خير خلقك محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.